Christian, the more we have STDs and teen pregnancy. So obviously Christianity is not curing the problem. Whereas you look at the more secular states, it's actually being the secular state that is curing the problem. That's why Sweden is so much better off than us on these metrics. It's not because of promotion of Christianity, it's by promotion of secular humanist ideals.
Well,
ask if you wanted to get at two different questions. It sounds like you're confusing.
I'm not confusing it.
Yeah, you're definitely confusing.
I'm definitely not.
You keep switching between two arguments.
No, I'm switching.
So
I'm only using one.
Like that's true.
Uh-huh.
That isn't caused by legal prostitution. Because that's the opposite of that, right?
It is actually.
So if you think it's caused by legal prostitution, then what you're arguing for is that the government should be more regulating of the industry, which is perfectly sensible.
Well, yeah, and they can regulate it by making it illegal.
Yeah, but that's
a great regulation. Like, oh, hey, you know what's really great about this? We can just make it illegal.
It has all the negative effects of hurting a bunch of people. It's a worse outcome.
Who is it going to hurt? How is it going to really hurt 18-year-olds? How is this a better world that you are postulating, that 18-year-olds can prostitute themselves on the internet because you think that what they're going to do it? They're going to do it anyway?
No, they can do what they want. That's the thing. It's freedom. It's not the government's business to tell them what to do with
I think,
their own lives.
But here's where we deviate, right? Why is it not, especially according to you, when I look at what your definition is like, it does seem like it is the government's business to regulate these things. It's absolutely their business.
Only to the pursuit of harm. So
the pursuit of harm. 18-year-olds having sex on the internet is very harmful.
Let me answer your question earlier, where you asked about what would be the benefit. There are actually several. But I'll just go into the one example that we're bringing so far. Legalizing prostitution reduces STD rates. And it reduces STD rates not just in people who are frequenting prostitutes. It spreads throughout the society so that even innocent people, by your definition, who aren't engaging in prostitution are actually being protected from STDs.
Yeah, and do we have some of the highest STD rates in the world right now with all of your free love, free sex? Don't stay out of my bedroom.
Do you know what correlates with STD rates around the world and in this country? Christianity.
Oh, I see. Wait a second.
The more Christian states have more STDs, the more Christian countries have more STDs.
So do you think that when this place was a lot more Christian, there were a lot more STDs?
Well, if we don't have data on that, I don't know. But
the answer is no. Hang on.
I'm talking about the data right now.
Yeah, I'm talking about the data right now, too.
Rates, so we can show that there's a correlation between how Christian a country is and how many STDs there are. And therefore, the more secular the country, the fewer STDs there are.
No, actually, when we parse this is crazy, actually. I would never expect you to make this argument. If you're talking about the more Christian an area is, the more STD it is, if we chalk this up between minority, non-minority, that's the case. And so this is what's really interesting about this. I bet most of the countries...
It's cross-country.
Yeah, but...
To other countries. It's same in Sweden, when you compare Sweden to the U.S.
I bet most of the countries...
compare Japan to the U.S.
Are most of the countries that you're going to be making a comparison to, where the STD rates really start to climb up, going to be third world nations who are Christian?
Well, third world nations aren't necessarily free democracies. That varies. So that's not really a relevant comparison here. So, but no, these are the studies. The studies show that when you have a more Christian society... whether it's state or country, whether it's Finland, for example.
Do you think we had more?
You can't blame STDs on minorities.
Well, I got it.
The statistics don't support that.
This is wild to me. Do you think that we were more or less of a Christian country in 1945?
Do you think? I think we're less of a Christian country now.
I agree. So if that's the case, shouldn't we see way more STDs in 1945 than we do right now?
I don't know, because I don't know the data on that.
Oh, well, there was...
But what would matter...
Wait, hang on. If I could demonstrate for you, if we just look at the historic STD rates, and we're seeing the STD rates grow, and this is attributed to things like sex work and promiscuity, especially sexual revolution since the 70s, imagine this, Richard. I can just logically demonstrate this for you. Are people having more or less sex now that they have condoms, birth control, vasectomies, would you say?
Oh, yeah, definitely, probably having
and
more
what
sex,
would you correlate higher than sex for STDs? Anything?
Well, you can look at this where you see the military. You look at the military in World War II, the STD rates in our soldiers compared to the military now, it's down a lot. So
because they regulate sex. They regulate.
No.
Yeah, well, yes, they
soldiers
do.
can have as much sex, even more sex now than
Wait
they
a
did
second.
back then.
Wait a second.
So
let's back up. Let's make sure we got this right. Okay, so if it is the case that we go back to 1945, you say it's a more Christian country then, right? There's less STDs. You agree with me that it is the case that the correlation of STD, the highest one's going to be sexual intercourse. People are having more sexual intercourse, especially since the sexual revolution.
You got to be careful here, because to do a correct comparison, you actually need to compare like with like. So there are conditions that change between...
We are Christian, less Christian. like with
yeah.
like.
No, but I'm just saying that there are other conditions, economic, population size, all these other conditions that can affect the relationship.
What could possibly be more of a correlate than penis and vagina? What?
Lots of things. Access
for an
to
STD?
Sex, access to prostitutes, access to sex, access to other partners, and so on.
Hang on. If we completely...
There are lots of things that can change this. So
hang on, Richard. Isn't it the case if we eliminated sexual intercourse, there would not be STDs no more?
I'm sorry, say that again?
If we eliminated sexual intercourse, nobody's having sex, there are no more STDs, right?
Sure.
Okay, great.
But the problem is that then that creates a greater harm if you're preventing everyone from having sex.
No, I understand.
So that's not my evidence-based, human-centered reasoning would deny that as an irrational move.
Yeah, that's not my point. My point is that this idea that you have that STDs, right, don't increase even though the population is having a lot more sex, because you're telling the population that it's fine to have a lot more sex because this God
you're
creature...
Wrong. You're scientifically wrong. And I can...
How am I scientifically wrong?
I'll give you an example. There's studies of polyamorous couples. The rate of STDs among monogamous couples is actually higher than the rate of STDs among polyamorous couples. Polyamorous couples are having way more sex than the monogamous people. Why is their STD rate down? Because they engage in safe sex. So that's the thing. You can't have that kind of correlation. If you're acting like a secular humanist, you're going to act in a rational way, and therefore you're going to evidence-based way. You're going to engage in safe sex, and therefore that's what we should promote. We should be teaching safe sex skills and so forth. So that has been shown when you actually teach people safe sex, they actually have less STDs.
Hang on,
less teen pregnancy.
What demographic do you think is the most polyamorous? Would you say homosexuals?
I don't know.
Homosexuals, Richard?
So the relevant metric would be
Richard,
numbers.
is it homosexuals?
So, no, you're asking about rate, but you're talking about raw numbers.
No, I'm just asking you, are there more polyamorous people who are... Yes, thank you. And what are the STD rates of those polyamorous people?
No, you're wrong. There are more heterosexual polyamorous people because by raw numbers.
I'm talking about per capita, clearly.
Yeah, by raw numbers. Per capita doesn't make your argument, though.
Yes, it actually does. What I'm saying is that if you have if it's polyamorous people, you're saying have less STDs. If it is the case that when we look at homosexuals who are the most polyamorous, they have the most STDs, what are you talking about?
But you aren't counting the polyamorous, like the actual polyamorous homosexuals, rather than just...
We can literally do it right now. Do you want me to go through and show you? Yes, of course.
Homosexuals practicing safe sex. You have a stat showing homosexuals practicing safe sex.
See, the thing is they have the most amount of sex. That's why they have the most amount of STDs.
But the example I gave shows that you can have way more sex and get less STDs. And so if that works in one population...
Actually, you haven't demonstrated that. You just said it.
No,
but
there's a study you can find.
Oh, there's a study. Where? From who? Let me look at it, because that
absolutely.
is...
So anybody can Google it. You can just go Googling it, try to find STD rates compared between polyamorous and monogamous people.
Moral preaching does not solve public health problems. Evidence does. When governments criminalize sex work or shame people away from sexual health education, the danger moves underground. People hide, avoid testing, and lose access to protection. The CDC says condoms, testing, treatment, and accurate sexual health education reduce STI risk. Studies on sex work policy also show punitive laws can increase health risks. Religious purity culture sounds strict, but strict does not mean effective. A society should reduce harm with evidence, not pretend shame is a health plan.
So, just as I said in my opening, you don't have to believe what I'm saying. You don't have to believe what he's saying. You can go find this stuff yourself. And so all we're doing is informing you of that. And so you know what to go look for in this. And this is a thing. So it proves that safe sex reduces STDs, even with increased sexual activity.
But it doesn't, because if we look at the...
lesson there is to promote safe sex, right?
Yeah.
It's not to suppress, send cops in to beat the shit out of you. Mm-hmm. We don't need Stonewall to get STDs down. We just need to have people who actually act responsibly, and we teach them how to do that, give them the skills and the means and access to that stuff.
Well,
it also lowers teen pregnancy. It lowers all the metrics that you're thinking of.
Yeah, let's just make sure that we get this right. I want to get into the argument now so we don't get too derailed. When we start with how do you think it is possible, that if it is the case that there is an invisible being that will punish people for wrongdoing, that they will be more likely to avoid the bad behaviors and promote others to avoid bad behaviors?
We know for a fact that that's not the case. So the statistics show the more Christians are actually, Christians are 3 times more likely to be teen mothers or single mothers than atheists. So,
but isn't that because atheists are more likely to abort their kids?
The Christian help is not.
Isn't that why?
No. There's no evidence of that.
There isn't?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
So, and this is the other thing, is like all the other markers follow country by country, state by state. The more Christian, the more we have STDs and teen pregnancy. So obviously Christianity is not curing the problem. Whereas you look at the more secular states, it's actually being the secular state that is curing the problem. That's why Sweden is so much better off than us on these metrics. It's not because of promotion of Christianity, it's by promotion of secular humanist ideals.
Well, Richard, since atheists, it's like 91% of them are pro-choice, right? Why do you think that they would be less likely to get an abortion than people who aren't pro-choice?
So a lot of people say they're pro-choice and then go have an abortion. So you have to actually count who's really doing it, not what they say.
Yeah, I know, but we're just going down to likelihoods here. So do you think that it's more likely that a person who believes and is pro-choice...
You have to go measure it.
I'm asking you about likelihoods, Richard. Do you think that...
I can't tell you likelihoods without doubt. You got to have evidence.
Logical.
You need evidence.
Logically. Do you think it's logically likely?
Evidence. If you're not reasoning from evidence, we're wasting time here. So
okay, well then how can you make... If that's the case, then how can you make the claim that one or the other is less or more likely? You can't?
When I have evidence. Then
that's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. That's how you decide everything.
I just want to make sure.
You need evidence-based reasoning. If you don't have the evidence, you can't make the claim. So you need your positions to be based on the evidence and what actually happens. And so you actually have to go study. You have to actually go count. You can't just sit from the armchair and come up with these ideas. That doesn't work as a method. And that's one of the reasons why the Christian worldview is not best for society. Okay. We need a rational worldview that's evidence-based.
Got it.
That actually respects evidence as the fundamental authority, the highest authority.
So studies...
That will make society better by all metrics, including...
Studies showing that all areas with legal sex work increase human trafficking inflows. Countries with legalized prostitution reported 20 to 30% higher trafficking inflows than those where it's criminalized, according to the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime. STD rates are lower in most Christian majority countries. Isn't that interesting? Driven by wealth and systems rather than faith. I'll give you that point, but it doesn't take away from mine. Yeah. If anything, highly religious Christians, hang on, I'm trying. If anything, highly religious Christian subgroups show the protective effects. STDs are not more prevalent in Christian countries. In fact, the evidence points to the opposite. Christian majority nations, particularly those in Europe and the Americas, generally have lower STD rates than non-Christian majority countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, parts of Asia.
Yes, wrong comparisons, right?
Yeah, well, this isn't being a direct comparison to secular nations, but most of these, there's not any nations which are purely secular.
Secular humanist nations have to be free democratic nations. Otherwise, they're not secular and they're not humanist.
Okay, yeah, but so the Christian nations, the Christian Western nations.
Well, so first of all, you can't include states that aren't free democracies because they have completely different metrics for what's going on. And then secondly, you can't include highly impoverished countries because obviously you have completely different metrics going on there. So what you have to compare is like with like. So you have to look at free developed nations.
So I just want to make sure. I think we're coming to the point of the debate where we can start to have a real good argument here. I heard you say that you think that you can get oughts from ISs. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me how?
Yes. So if a surgeon wants to save the life of a patient, he ought to sterilize his instruments. And this can be scientifically proven as true. You can prove scientifically that the desire exists, and you can prove scientifically that the prescribed action will actually satisfy the desire. And in fact, that's called a hypothetical imperative. Philippa Foot has argued for, first of all, even Immanuel Kant agreed hypothetical imperatives can be proven scientifically. They are empirical facts.
So you think
Philippa Foot argues that all morality is just hypothetical imperatives.
So you think Hume is wrong?
Well, Hume didn't say the thing that I think you said. So do you want me to go over that?
Yeah, Hume is saying mere is.
Say it again?
Mere is. A mere is.
I'm not understanding.
Well, so what you're doing is you're taking things that are hypothetically loaded with oughts already. And that's the problem.
No.
Hang on. Yeah, hang on. Let me make the case. You are. Yeah, what Hume is talking about a mere is. So like the door is cold. How do I get an ought from that?
Yeah, so Hume said that he didn't say that you can't derive an ought from an is. What he said was that religious people, Christians, were not doing that they were just ordering things. They were not demonstrating that the ought comes from the is. And that's what Kant actually did, is he showed that hypothetical imperatives, you can do that, and you are doing that. So the ought comes from the is. The is what is your desire?
Again, I'm going to ask you the question. The door,
best achieves the
desire.
desire.
The door is cold. How do I get an ought from that?
Well, that particularly, you're missing half of the question. So, like, you would have to know what is the desire that relates to that. And then you have to rationally order the desires.
No, it's because that's a mere is. It's a mere is statement.
Yeah, but you can't derive an imperative without referring to a goal.
That's because it's a mere is.
No, that's... Well,
no, yes. It's because it's a mere is.
Yes, but
hang on, you got this wrong.
Look, imperative propositions are built out of two facts, two actual objective facts. A goal and a means to the goal. So just describing a doorknob doesn't describe any goals, so you can't get an imperative out of
because it's a mere is.
And it's therefore irrelevant.
No, it's therefore the most relevant. No, if you have a mere is statement...
You can't get imperatives without goals.
Yes, that's what Hume is saying. Hume is applying this to a mere is. Why are you saying exactly? You just disagreed with me 5 seconds ago.
No, he agrees with me on this.
No, he didn't agree with you on this. He's talking about a mere is.
You're skipping the goal. This makes no sense. No, Hume was saying that once you have... And that's why he actually developed his moral system based on human sentiment. So it's based on what you want, and therefore in the rational ordering of desires... you have to have the goal.
What is Hume's guillotine?
Goal plus the facts equals imperatives, and that's how you get hypothetical.
What is Hume's guillotine?
Say again?
What is Hume's guillotine?
What is Hume's?
Hume's guillotine.
Guillotine?
Yes.
Are you talking about the thing we're talking about right now?
I'm asking you what Hume's guillotine is.
Well, you describe it.
You can just say you don't know.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, so you don't know?
Yeah,
okay, that's
I
okay.
Don't remember. I've heard of it, but I can't remember.
This is the failure of religious politics. It starts with what feels morally pure, then looks for facts afterward. More punishment means better behavior. Sounds simple, but real life does not work that way. Research in the US has found that stronger abstinence-only education is linked with higher teen pregnancy and birth rates. Another study found state religiosity strongly predicted higher teen birth rates, even after controlling for income and abortion rates. Evidence-based policy beats purity slogans. If the goal is healthier families, use what works.
For as this ought or ought not expresses some new relation or affirmation, it is necessary that it should be observed and explained, and at the same time that a reason should be given for what seems altogether inconceivable. How this new relation can be a deduction from others which are entirely different from it. He's referencing a mere is.
Yeah, and then he goes on to explain that the mere is once you get a goal is the is, then you actually get the result.
Well, that's because the goal is the ought. You're conflating, so this is the problem that you're conflating here.
You're talking about values versus ought.
Well,
ought derives from values. They're not identical, right? Like you have a value.
So you
what you ought to do can depend on your value.
So how are we getting the ought from the is here?
So oughts come out of the combination of two things: a goal, you call it values, and the means, right? So like whatever the facts are in terms of what best achieves that goal is then the true ought regarding that. So you have to have the goal. And so the question is, how do you get moral goals?
But that's already loaded with ought.
No.
Yes.
You're starting with values.
What do you think ought...
Values don't have ought.
Richard, what do you think ought means here?
Just a value by itself is like a doorknob. It doesn't entail anything. The value by itself, in conjunction with the facts of the world, then derives the ought. So they're not identical. The ought is a derivation of two facts.
Yeah, but the is not giving you that ought. Some other category is.
The goal is a fact. It's an is. And the means is an actual fact as well. So you have two facts.
Wait.
But you have to have both facts. This is like...
Help me. Hang on. No. You got to help me out with this one. I guess I'm a little slow. How could it be the case that if you have a goal, right? I have a goal, right? Yeah. Ought you do that goal?
Yeah. Say again?
Ought you do that goal?
Okay, now that's you can't answer that question just by itself. Just with the value, you can't answer that question. You need the facts. So that gets to rational ordering of values, and this is another thing that Hume talks about. Is that
so? Then the is statement here, right, is again moving back to a mere is.
Like which value should you have?
Yeah.
Right. But if we set that aside for a moment, as soon as you have a value, then there are true ought statements that derive from that value. Now, the question is, what is the rational ordering?
No, there's not true ought statements that derive from...
So like as soon as the doctor wants to save the patient, he ought to sterilize his instruments. The ought immediately follows from the combination.
Yeah, but do you see you already entailed the ought in the is?
No.
The doctor wants to do X.
I think you're doing a semantic thing here. Like
it is. Semantics are important when we're about to talk about what we ought to do with society.
The ought is a combination of two facts, and you keep confusing the ought with one of those facts.
No, I'm saying that what you are doing here is you're preloading, right? You're taking a statement.
It
yes,
derives
you
from
are.
two facts, neither of which is an ought.
No.
Now, if you want to get to
it's a mere is. I can actually demonstrate this for you.
What I think, let me see if I get this right as to what you're trying to get at. Is you don't object to the fact that oughts can derive from an is once you accept the goal. What you're asking is, how do we decide which goals we ought to have?
No, let's back up.
Okay.
So let's start with this.
Which is the two things?
Yeah. How do you when you say, right, a doctor, he's going to save a patient, right?
He wants
to save a patient, right? Well, that's already the ought, right?
No, it's not.
Yes. Why does he want to save him then?
So no.
Why he thinks it's an ought, right?
An ought actually has to have two pieces. So this is a semantic fact about what the word imperative language requires. It requires value, a goal, and the facts, and you derive the ought is sterilize the instruments. The ought is not want to save the patient. It could be, but once you accept, you just for whatever reason we haven't justified why the doctor wants to do this or that he should do this or that. Once he has the desire to do this, an ought is automatically.
Do you see, like, if you said, I don't know, all Christians, right, they should go to church. Or you just say, like, I'm a Christian, and so the ought there is you must go to church. That's even better. The ought there is you must go to church because that's entailed with Christianity. You can't be a Christian if you're not going to church. Can't save the patient unless you're using the instrument. Hang on.
I don't think that's true.
You can't save
Lots of Christians don't believe you have to go to church.
Yeah, but let's just say that was the agreement of what the definition of a Christian is, okay? Is that you have to go to church or you can't be a real Christian, right? You're saying
let's assume everybody agrees.
So you ought go to church based on that is, right?
Yeah. But notice, the ought is not identical to the is. The ought is derived from two different
you're loading
ises.
this to something past
you're
mere is.
Conflating the value with the ought. So the ought is sterilize the instruments. The value is wanting to save the patient.
You're mistaken. You're mistaken here with a mere is.
Sterilizing instruments is the ought, not the wanting to save the patient.
No, there's no ought entailed there unless it's a mere is. Otherwise, you already are giving the ought.
The ought, sterilize instruments, is logically necessarily entailed by the value to the desire. The desire is to save
because there's already an ought.
No, it doesn't have to be.
Yes.
So I think
although it's a mere is statement is what we're looking at. No. I mean, I can demonstrate this for you a million times.
That's why I was trying to ask if you wanted to get at two different questions here. It sounds like you're confusing the two.
I'm not confusing it.
Yeah, you're definitely confusing
I'm definitely not.
You keep switching between two arguments.
No, I'm switching. So I'm only using one.
It sounds like you want to have the ought for the, like, why ought the doctor want to save the patient? That's a different imperative. That's a different ought statement from what the doctor should do once he does desire.
Because you're already loading the ought in it.
No, there's no ought in there. It's just the desire.
It's a mere look.
All it is a desire. It's not an ought.
What Hume's guillotine is talking about is mere is statement. The door is cold. The door is cold. You can't get an ought from that, right?
I think you're obfuscating here, and
I don't think I'm obfuscating.
So would you give me a moment to explain that?
Yeah.
So your audience can hear this.
Okay.
I want to give you a chance as well, but then in just a bit, because we've gone on with this topic for a decent amount of time, I do want to make sure there are other topics explored if you guys are up for it.
Yeah. What's our time left on the conversation?
37 minutes in total.
Okay. Remaining. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So when you construct an ought, the ought is the thing you ought to do. So the sterilizing instruments, that's the ought. So you ought to sterilize your instruments. The value by itself might not be an ought at all. It might not even be true that the doctor ought to sterilize that he ought to want to save the patient. Maybe he ought not to want to save the patient, but he wants to save the patient anyway. Just the possession of the desire, even if it's not like justified, just the possession of the desire entails an ought. The ought is the sterilizing the instruments. So it's different from the value, so you can't conflate those two things. Now, if you want to ask a different question as to why ought the doctor want to save the patient, now we're moving to a different ought. We're moving one step back, and then we get to the whole point of Hume about rational ordering of values. And I talk about this again, for people who want to go further into this, if you're not following or it's confusing or whatever, if you want to know more about this, and my full demonstration is in the article in Religions that I cited in the thing. And you can find moral facts exist in all possible universes. You can Google that and find it. It's free. It's not paywalled. And so you can read that and you can see how actually philosophers
look, you can't eat all the time with endless diatribe. So the reason here's what's going on. We're trying to untangle a concept. We're both making an ought claim. I'm making the ought claim that I think Christianity is better for society. He's saying secular humanism is. Yeah. And so what we're doing is we're untangling the philosophy behind that, is whether or not an ought's a mere is or not. He doesn't believe that it is. And so that's the point. This is why semantics and untangling these things is so important.
Oughts derive from is all the time, including the oughts we're discussing here.
Mere
I
is
even explained the desires and why people ought to have those desires.
But it's for a mere is. But here's the thing. Diving into this, I guess, kind of getting back to the idea of Christian nationalism. If it's the case that in this democracy we go ahead and vote in Christian nationalism, what's the problem with that?
Christian morality often claims to be the only solid foundation, but that falls apart fast. Real moral decisions require goals, evidence, and consequences. If we want less harm, we study what actually reduces harm. We do not need a Bible verse to know a surgeon should sterilize tools or that laws should protect people. The danger starts when religion tries to turn private belief into public power. A vote can make a law legal, but it does not make it morally right.
Yeah.
Which one? Which actual proposition being proposed by Christian nationalists right now?
It sounds like
you're
defining Christian nationalism as simply taking away the rights of gay people to marry.
No. I'm asking you a specific question. I'm going to ask it again. What proposition from anybody who's advocating Christian nationalism would not fall under the idea that they're changing the laws to better suit themselves, including amending several constitutional amendments or things like this? How would that be fascism? By your definition, that's not fascism now.
Right.
So if that's the case...
It only becomes fascism when violence comes up.
Yeah, right, exactly. So Christian nationalism is not, in fact, unless you can give me the propositions of Christian nationalism that are going to lead to this sort of violence rather than just law changing, can you?
So are you claiming that Christian nationalism won't increase...
I didn't claim anything. I asked you a question. Can you steel man or at least repeat back?
I got to understand what you're getting at. So I need to
No, you don't. You don't need to understand what I'm getting at to understand my question. You just need to answer the question.
I don't know what you're asking for.
Well, let me ask you again.
Yeah.
Christians right now, Christian nationalist thought leaders all over the place who are saying we want to amend these various laws under the democratic rules, use the Constitution in order to amend many of these laws. Yeah. Right, and then if you violate those laws,
protected right to do that, to talk about it.
Yeah. So hang on.
We have the protected right to persuade people to.
I understand, but what I'm saying
to
you is, how could that be fascism if there's no use of force being involved here? So if the can you show me the Christian nationalist proposition that leads to force?
If you're talking about the Christian nationalist government is not going to use force to enforce any laws or do anything,
your secular government will.
Yes, but those are evidence-based, human-centered things. They're not based on. Ideology.
That's not what you said. You said fascism is use of force rather than persuasion democracy. It doesn't matter if they're using evidence or not. Hang on.
Persuasion and democracy.
They're utilizing persuasion and democracy, and they're still utilizing persuasion and democracy.
Yeah. Yes.
So they're not fascist, right?
Well, they're not advocating. I mean, they might be advocating for a fascist government, but they're not fascist yet because
no. That's not what I'm asking.
To violence.
This is wild to me. So help me out here again. If it's the case that democratically, for instance, we just say no more trans, right? You're just not allowed to be trans anymore, right? Or I don't know, you're not allowed to get married as a homosexual anymore, and you're not allowed to do prostitution anymore. Let's just say that you're like not allowed to gamble or do drugs anymore ever, right? You're not allowed to do any of those things.
Yep.
That's passed democratically through persuasion.
Yeah.
Now it has the force of law.
That's right.
That's no longer fascism.
That by itself is not fascism.
Then can you give me any Christian propositions?
If you can persuade people to vote again to take those things away and change them, yes.
Then show me the Christian nationalists out there who are giving the proposition which would lead to this fascism you're talking about, because that's all they're talking about doing.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what you have in mind as Christian nationalism, like what the Christian nationalist government
That's not my question. My question is, can you name a single Christian nationalist right now who is proposing anything other than just amending laws and tailoring them to their own preferences?
Wait, so let me see if I understand what you're asking. So you're asking for example, the kill the gays people, for instance.
When there's no Christian nationalist seriously proposing to kill homosexuals.
Yes, absolutely.
Who?
So there was a guy who ran in Texas, had got like 100,000 votes on the kill the gays biblical policy concept.
So come on, this is not serious. There's no serious political movement for this. The ones who couldn't get elected
here went to Uganda and got it done there, and actually got Uganda to actually start trying to kill the gays. And then, of course,
I don't think Uganda needed much help with that, right? But the thing is like pointing this out again when we're talking about the proposition here. I can't actually think of a serious Republican, a serious person in office, or a serious Christian nationalist who has any sort of following which could actually have anything get done like this, who's proposing anything other than amending laws, having them enforced to suit their preferences, just like you. Hang on, just like you are. You can't call that fascism then, by your own definition.
So it depends on like what. So that's why I'm just not even clear on what you think that Christian nationalists are going to do when they take over. So
I'm asking you, which Christian nationalist has a serious proposition for utilizing force other than democracy and persuasion, which is what you're considering fascism to be. You said all of them are fascist right in your opening statement. Can you give me the proposals that they're making?
The opening statement. So the Christian nationalist idea of destroying the Constitution, right? Of actually taking away these checks and balances that actually, for instance, taking away democracy, for instance, taking away the women's right to vote, for instance. So these things.
Wait. If you take away women's rights to vote via persuasion and democracy, that's not fascism.
No, by the time you get to that, right, by the time you're actually taking away a right that is necessary for a well-functioning government, now you're actually involved
It's not necessary for a well-functioning government.
You're limiting the power. You're actually putting the power in men. So now men control the government. So that would actually start to be trending.
Wait, hang on. Well, okay, so, then 18-year-olds control the government and 17-year-olds don't? They're disenfranchised?
So if now you're talking about why do we enfranchise?
No, I'm pointing out something important here.
You're changing the subject.
No, I'm going to stay on the subject. Use of force rather than persuasion, democracy. I still haven't heard a single Christian nationalist thought leader that you can name who has any sort of serious following, any sort of political following, has any sort of moxie that can get this done.
Sounds like a big following, but I think like this is a thing that people can test and go see like what actually are Christian nationalists.
Yeah, who though? For. Can you name a name? Can you give me the name?
No, I don't.
Because there isn't any, Richard. There's none who aren't using.
Yeah, that's
and by the way, so Richard, here's Richard's entire argument reduced. This is wild. And you can, if I'm straw manning this, I would like you actually to correct it.
Yeah.
But isn't it the case that what you're saying here is, as long as Christian nationalists utilize persuasion and democracy to change any amendments we don't like, any laws we don't like, and we utilize only persuasion and democracy to do that, and then enforce those laws tailored to our preferences, that is not indeed fascism at all, is it?
There's two possible outcomes. So one is that it's not. The other is that if they start actually using violence to suppress the vote, for instance, if they actually start contradicting the humanist necessary rights-based democracy, if they get rid of the democracy and the persuasion part, now they're fascists. Right?
Well, they can limit democracy.
Once you've got billy clubs beating people up for saying things you don't like.
Yeah, I know, but nobody's proposing that. No Christian nationalist. You can't name one. Name one.
So
can you just name one? Just one.
What will you do if I have YouTubers out there find a bunch of names that fit that? Like what behavior would you engage in?
I would engage with those same YouTubers and I would say, look, let's go through it. Are these people actually proposing that we're using force? These serious, like guys who can actually get this done, they're seriously proposing that we're using force in order to do anything other than enforce laws that the majority of people want because they're voting them in.
Getting rid of democracy itself then would not be an example of that. That would actually be instituting a fascist government. So
you're not getting rid of democracy by limiting it. No, all you're doing is putting bumpers on it. Like you want.
No. Like if you take away the votes of half the people, you're actually working towards.
That's not destroying democracy. That's flat out illogical. Then why can't 15-year-olds vote?
So that gets to the competence argument, right? So there are people who are adults, let's say 40-year-olds, who can be declared legally under due process of law to be incompetent. And so then they don't get the vote.
Okay, so help me out here. Why is it then that if we raised, let's just say hypothetically, we raised the voting age to 35, is that fascism?
Yeah, I would say so. It's because you're disenfranchising competent people who are actually part of the society and therefore have an equal say.
Do you think 17-year-olds are a lot less competent than 18-year-olds?
So that varies case by case. So
yeah, so exactly. It varies case by case.
If we wanted to have a better system, we could have competency tests, and so decide the age, rather not by age, but by whether you pass the competency test. And then some people over 18 would not qualify as competent, and some people under 18 would qualify as competent.
Christian nationalism exposes the danger of religion in government. Once one faith gets political power, freedom becomes conditional. Democracy is not healthy when the majority can vote away basic rights from minorities, women, LGBTQ people, or non-believers. The First Amendment protects religion by keeping government from establishing one. Even the Bible says there is neither male nor female in Galatians 3:28, yet religious politics has often fought equality. Secular humanism protects people by rights, evidence, and consent, not ancient authority. What do you think is better for society, religious rule or secular humanism? Comment your thoughts below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want us to continue, comment more atheism.